Welcome back, Commander. Though it may not know it yet, the galaxy is under threat. And to combat this threat, two idiots must do some errands to win our companions' love. The game is Mass Effect, and this is the N7 Project.
Status report.
So, how you been?
We had a lovely time yesterday because we celebrated your wife's birthday, and so there was lots of good food and game playing out at the farm and feed. It was good. It was a good day.
Yeah. The farm and feed is basically the game bar that I envisioned like 20 years ago. I was like, why there's sports bars? Why isn't there video game bars? And
yeah. Where we were sitting, they did a really smart thing, which was have it was like a restaurant style booth. And then they had two TVs, one above each side's head. So you could sit across from some people and still be able to like talk to them. You weren't all like facing in the same direction.
Mm-hmm.
And then they were showing the same thing on both sides. So you could like, you were just looking above the other people's heads to watch the same video. Which actually was a pretty, like, as far there'd be no reason to have that in your own home, but it actually is a really good way to play like a party game thing because you're still absolutely like around a central area. It was really good.
Yeah, and it cuts down on screen peeking.
And then I've been searching around for another game to sink all of my time into because I mean I can't just keep playing Heartspace Shipbreaker forever, right? I mean I probably could. But I've been looking around. I grabbed two ones that were highly recommended. One was Disco Elysium, which I think is a good game, but I think I have to stop playing it.
Oh, why is that?
Yeah, I was playing it and I got through to like the second day, and I missed there was like this epic level check that I missed. Okay. I try not to be spoilery about it, but then I let the game progress a little bit, and I was like, that bugs me that I missed that. What was that I missed? And I went and I looked up the spoiler answer, and apparently it is like a game-breaking revelation, like a revelation of like how to get the proper ending to the game, I guess.
Oh.
And so I was like, and there was a way, even though I didn't have enough skill points, there was a way I could have prolonged my ability to do the check and gone back and done it. And I didn't do that. I screwed it up. And so I was like, oh, fuck. Okay, I'm going to start over. So I started the game over, which, actually not a terrible thing to do now that I knew what I was doing. I could like go back in there and make some different choices and see some different stuff. And that'd be fine. That didn't bother me nearly so much as I played about 4 hours on the new game and closed out Disco Elysium. I swear to God, I remember saving manually. And then when I came back to it, I had lost 4 hours worth of progress on the second time through. And I was like, no, I'm done. I can't. Like, this is nothing wrong with, other than this. I think it was actually probably Steam's problem because Steam does its own save game sync. So I think it was probably Steam that killed me. But I'm like, this is a good game and I have to stop playing. I can't keep doing this.
That's always unfortunate. I've been there several times with certain games. Like, why do you not have an autosave system that's functional? Like what?
Yeah.
It is 2022. What is wrong with you?
And this one does have an autosave function that seemed to be working great. It just didn't work. I think the Steam Sync thing went in and overwrote or something like that, or fucked it up because like I had lost 4 hours of game progress.
That's really unfortunate. Well, if you're looking for an RPG, you might check out the Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous that it's out now.
Okay.
And I think we both tried playing Kingmaker at some point and bounced pretty hard off the kingdom system, which from what I understand is no longer an issue. And this instead focuses a lot more on like the power fantasy of like because like it's all about the mythic paths and like basically kind of that like ascension to godhood, becoming just ridiculously overpowered.
Gotcha. How's the companions? Because that's the real thing that I realized that drives me more than anything else in an RPG, is it needs to have really good companions.
Supposedly really good. Again, I haven't played it yet, so.
Oh, okay.
But tons of romances, tons of fleshed out characters, and a lot of like important player choice. Like everything matters when it comes to player choice.
Cool. Yeah, I think my ideal RPG is a giant dating sim with some combat attached.
I think this is probably the reverse of that, where it's a giant combat sim with some dating attached. But
Oh, okay. So depending on how the balance works out, we might be all right.
Yeah. But yeah, if you love making overpowered characters, I think this is probably the way to go.
I did spend a ton of time in Disgaea doing just that.
Like I think, and the other thing is like there's a ton of like this is a little bit spoilery for the game, but like the whole thing is like basically picking like your mythic path, like where and what you choose is very like it's all like kind of alignment based, but like at endgame, like you can be, following like the angel path, like you can follow the demon path. You can be a lich. You can be a literal swarm of maggots that eats your entire party and just consumes everything.
Okay, down. Yeah, that sounds rad. I'm all down for becoming a swarm of maggots. I also picked up The Longing, which is the pitch for this game was so weird that I had to try it. Which is that the game starts and you are you control a little like soot-colored guy, little dude, just a little guy, and he's been created by this huge god king guy under a mountain, and the guy's like the god's like, okay, I need to charge up my power to do one last final thing, but I need to charge up for 400 days, so I'm going to go to sleep. Your only job is to wake me up in 400 days, 400 real-time days from now. And then that's it. That's the only task you've been given, right? And so then you're just this little dude walking around in these underground caverns, and everything takes I wouldn't say excruciating. It takes a meditative amount of time. Like everything is really slow and deliberate. It's about like basically the only like skill you need for the game is patience. Like it's very, very slow.
So what is the actual gameplay element?
So it's a little bit like point and click adventure, kind of, where you're mostly like wandering from screen to screen, trying to sort of build a mental map of the area you're in. And there are various things that the Shade decides that he'd like to do. Like he's like, I want to build a bed. I'd like to find some more books. I'd like to find some more things to decorate my little cave with. So you're going around and finding crystals and like trying to find your way into new parts of the map. But all of this is about like about patience and about like biding your time for stuff. Like a small spoiler for The Longing, I guess, but one of the first things you'll come across is you'll walk up a path, or for me, one of the first things I did was I walked up a path and I got to the end of the path and he's like, oh yeah, I don't want to jump over this gap, but there's a stalactite up there that's going to fall in about a week. I'll try back in a week. And then you just like leave and come back in a week and it will have fallen, and that opens up a new path for you. So sometimes it's waiting, sometimes it's like, you can find a little pickaxe and he can like pickaxe at little parts of the walls, and those take an incredible amount of time to do. But like, it's interesting because it doesn't allow you to skip anything really. You kind of, it's a little bit like forcing you to learn mindfulness a little bit and just like live with it, and it's interesting. I'm not sure I could completely recommend it for all people, but if what I have described to you sounds interesting, then it would be worth picking up.
Yeah, I feel like that's not the game for me. But
yeah, and the thing is also because it also continues to play when you've turned it off. It's definitely one of those you could check in and spend a half an hour with it every day, as opposed to playing huge chunks of time with it, which is nice.
Yeah, and then like you get to day 400 and you forget to awaken the God King, and whoops, you just spent a year and a half and you failed the game.
I don't know what happens at that point. I haven't gotten that far. I'm only on like day 360 or something like that. So this is also a slight spoiler, I guess. But if you improve the quality of the guy's little cave, then while you spend time there, the time starts ticking over faster. So not like orders of magnitude faster, but faster enough that like you can skip a couple of days at a time by like turning your switch off and then like coming back the next day. And a couple of days will pass. It's interesting. The art is also quite lovely. It's all hand-drawn sprites and stuff, and the sound design's really good too.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
Yeah. Okay, well, do you want to hit on to our mission debrief?
Sure, yeah.
Mission debrief.
So today's episode, we're covering like not exactly side quests. These are almost all companion quests and background quests for your various versions of Shepard.
Yes.
But first, the most important question. Pop quiz, hotshot. Do you blow up the hostages?
Being Renegade, or not Renegade, the other one, Paragon. Yes, I've played this game recently.
Yeah.
Being Peregrine, no, we let the terrorists go in favor of saving the hostages.
Gotcha. Yeah, so we'll get to that. That's the DLC, the something falling the sky or something like that. DLC. But first, we got to deal with some background quests. Now, depending on your shepherd, you're only going to see one of the following three. So, we're going to start off with old, unhappy, far off thing. If shepherd is a spacer, they will meet some old drunk dude, Zabaleta, in a corridor on the Citadel. He says he knows your mom. Wait, Shep's got a mom? They're not an orphan? He wants some credits because he's down on his luck. If you want, and why wouldn't you, you can go back to the Normandy and call the SSV Kilimanjaro and talk to your mom, who confirms the dude's identity and explain that his current problems are most likely caused by the dude's severe PTSD from the Batarian attack on Mindwar. She recommends Shep direct him to the future Veterans Affairs. Man, I hope the future VA is a less of a bureaucratic nightmare than the current VA. Either way, if you charm or intimidate him high enough, you can convince him to go get some help. So this is your shepherd, or
yeah. We got a mom in this one, which is really the most important part of picking the spacer background is you get a mom, which is surprisingly rare for RPG protagonists.
Exactly. It was such a weird thing the first time it showed up, and it was like, go call your mom. And I'm like, wait, what? I have like just a mom I can go call? It's a very interesting, like the presence of these like background quests are pretty funny because they are like, they really dramatic, like, I don't know, none of them are huge, but they really can add layers onto your shepherd's like backstory. Like I'm really, really glad they included these things.
Mm-hmm. Whereas, I think Jess was getting a little frustrated that everyone knew about what happened on Akuz.
Oh.
And everyone felt the need to bring it up. Like, here's Shepard dealing with, the PTSD of being the sole survivor on Akuz. And everyone's like, hey, I heard about Akuz. Like, that can't be great for your mental health.
Yeah, maybe.
But anyways, that's irrelevant to help.
Yeah, because you might not. Yeah. This is specifically for spacers. Yeah. This is if you are if you're playing sort of the one true playthrough, if you were only ever going to play one way through Mass Effect, the 3 series, I would say start with spacer and stick with it the whole way through, because like this is the best version of these 3 things. We'll tell you now.
Yeah.
It's also reasonably involved. Like to me, it feels like you go talk to the guy, you go talk to your mom, you go talk to the guy again. That felt like the right length for these things.
Yeah.
The next 2 are like, they feel much shorter. So we'll go ahead and we'll do the summaries for these other 2, and we'll talk about the sort of the group of them together a little bit more.
Absolutely.
So the next one is Citadel Old Friends. If Shepard is from Earth, you'll meet an old gang member from your past, Finch, outside of Korra's Den. He wants a favor for you to help convince a Turian cop, another gang member, free. This guy apparently tried to poison some medical supplies for a Turian colony, which is a freaking hate crime. You can choose to charm or intimidate the Turian into letting the guy go, or possibly better, you can refuse. Finch will say he's going to tell everyone about how Shep used to be in a gang, but frankly, that sounds like a very minimal problem for humanity's first oversight-free, unlimited powers secret agent. I say kill him. So this is the one that I got on this playthrough, and I have to say, felt very disappointing. Finch and Shepard did not have any kind of like real relationship in that little section right there. And so I didn't feel it. I ended up doing the thing where I saved the dude. I don't know why. I just kind of picked randomly. And then I looked up the other options later and realized I should have killed him. But like literally you go in, you talk to Finch, you go talk to the other guy, and then you come back and Finch is fucking gone. Like he doesn't even like stick around to say, okay, we're done. And so it's actually kind of disappointing. And I like, that one didn't feel like one of the better options. So to me, at least.
Yeah. Do you know if it has any payout? Like, I suppose this would be spoilers and more for Shadow Broker.
We'll talk about it a little bit. Yeah. Shadow Broker. Yeah. Okay. And then finally, the one that neither of us did this time, but that I've done in the past, at least, I think you might have too, is Citadel I Remember Me. If Shep is a colonist, you get a call that there is a disturbance down on the docking bay, and there's a troubled young lady who was on Mindwar, Talitha. And she's having trouble dealing with their trauma and might hurt herself. Shep, who, having been on Mindwar, can help talk Talitha through what happened to her. And wait, is Shep a licensed trauma counselor? Shouldn't someone with some actual training handle this? Shit. In the end, you can convince her to take a sedative to calm down and get some help. This one is basically just the one conversation, although it is a pretty deep conversation. There's a lot of talking with Talitha on this one, where you're trying to you're going through various passages and trying to not press her too hard to get her to talk through everything and gain her trust, and then convince her to get some help. You can also just at any time leave her be and wander off and come back, and she'll just hang around. There doesn't seem to be a time pressure on this one very much. It's of the three, it's maybe the middle option, I would think, because you do feel like you sort of build a rapport with her over time and sort of with your shared trauma, which is interesting. Although I still say the mom is the best option.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I don't think I've ever actually done the Earthborn Shepard.
It's not hard to miss, actually. It's fairly easy to miss, even if you picked the Earth one, because there's not a ton of reasons to go back to, by the time that it's triggered and where you would normally be able to find Finch, there aren't as many reasons to go to Cora's Den. So I think I've played through a playthrough where I didn't find Finch at all, and even despite being an Earther.
Sure, yeah.
Because kind of out of the way, there's not a reason to go there.
Once you've done the Fist thing, I don't think I ever go back to Cora's Den.
Yeah, once you've done Fist and also the waitress quest.
Right. Yeah.
And there's a couple of other little reasons to go down there, but they're really easy to knock out early and not see this one.
Yeah, Mass Effect 1 had a little bit of an issue with I guess, channeling the player to go to the right places. A lot of the stuff you kind of had to follow the RPG mentality of well, I've done a thing, I'd better go explore everywhere I've already been to see if anything's changed.
Yeah, that's something that they definitely were doing, for lack of a better term. And on the one hand, I do respect a game that will allow you to blow past things and not do them, because that gives a different experience to different players. And it also allows people to engage with a game as much as they want to, where they can sort of, if it's obvious what you need to do and what you don't need to do, if you want to just kind of blow through and get to the end, that's totally reasonable. And then you can have us who have to do the corner scratching of going, through absolutely every little, passageway and room and stuff and talk to every person. And we get more content.
In that matter, I kind of disagree.
Okay.
I think it's important to let players miss content, but I think it should be their choice to miss content. I don't think you should miss content just because you didn't, scour outside of just secret areas, Easter eggs, things like that. You shouldn't miss content just because you decided, or you didn't decide to check that one cupboard on that one planet.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. Not that I like that the idea that you can miss content, but you should be at least alerted to its presence. You shouldn't have to go digging for it. Yeah, no, I agree with you on that one. But I do like the fact that they allow things to be missed.
Yes,
but there should be easier ways to find it. There should be more people talking about it. This Finch guy should send you a message or something, saying, "Hey, Shepard, I've got a thing for you. I know that you'd like to do." I'd also kind of like to see, and I don't, maybe this is an option. I'd kind of like to have an ongoing thing where, he's trying to cause PR problems for Shepard,
Yeah.
If you refuse him, that would be cool. And as far as I can tell, he just fucks off, stuff like that. And that I have particular complaints about that one. It felt very abbreviated.
Yeah. Like Shepard being in a gang could have been a really cool thing to explore, especially come Mass Effect 3.
Yeah. And the response to that is that you need to have you need to have created relationships for Shepard to have with these people,
exactly,
who have all gone on and done their other stuff. And that way that you could build this story and an emotional connection to these characters, as opposed to this guy who just shows up. Me as a player has no reason to like or dislike this guy,
if you could have in the Spacer when, Shep has a mom that you have an obvious, relationship with. If just the other one, Shepard has a best friend or whatever, and they have that chemistry and whatnot.
Yeah.
Or,
even if before he asked me any questions, if the first thing he did had been hey, let's go for drinks. And then you just have a conversation talking about, your old lives back on Earth.
Yeah. The good old days or
yeah. That would have given me more of a reason to want to help him, despite the fact that his goals are really awful, because he's trying to get a guy out of being punished for a hate crime that he absolutely did. Yeah. But that being said, this is all stuff that like we often get into the realm of like, oh, wouldn't it be nice if they did this other thing? Yeah. But that being said, the fact that these things are included at all is fantastic. Like,
sure, yeah.
I don't remember another game doing something like this before Mass Effect, where like partway through the game, based off of what background you'd chosen, which felt kind of like a throwaway choice at the very beginning. You know, the people referenced it a lot, but it didn't feel like it was super impactful. It didn't give you any kind of mechanical bonuses.
Yeah.
But instead they're like, oh, here's a peek into the background that you chose 15, 20 hours ago, you know, is really cool. I actually really like the way they did that.
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of player choice mattering. Like just like, I feel like that any choice you make should always make your gameplay a little bit different than someone else's.
Yeah. On that note, it would have been interesting to see, like, I was going to say that really gets into some of the stuff that they did in the Dragon Age games, where depending on what backgrounds you chose with things like your race and stuff, gave you the same sort of options and stuff, which was pretty cool.
I think in the Dragon Age was like you even like sort of like your initial choice like basically changed like how your story started.
The first chapter was different, especially in and then in that first game.
And those things like echoed throughout the game.
That would be cool. Like for example, stuff how it changes your ongoing relationships could have been really cool too. Like if you were a spacer, so you're an Alliance military kid, that should really, really change your relationship with Ashley, I think.
Yeah.
That should be something that comes up and like maybe opens up additional dialogue options for you and stuff like that. I love when they do that kind of stuff. The fact that they did this version of it is great. But again, we come back to the same old complaint of we just want more. Like we just want more stuff that's more depth. All right, let's get into these other ones. So there's three side quests that you can end up doing that are specifically related to your various companions. Specifically the all the aliens who aren't Liara.
Yes.
Gets our own planet. So we're going to start off with Garrus's Find Dr. Saleon. Talking to Garrus reveals that he's got whatever the cop version of the one that got away is, a dude named Dr. Saleon, who was using down on their luck people as living organ production to sell in the black market. By the time they got enough evidence, the doctor had fled. Garrus really wanted to blow up the ship that Saleon was on, despite it also being full of civilians, but was not allowed to do so. Now that he's found out that Dr. Saleon is going by the name Dr. Hart and has been presumably continuing his dastardly mad science, he knows where Dr. Hart is and would really like Shepard to go kill him. You can find the relevant ship in the Herschel system and the Kepler Verge. Go inside and you'll find a lot of test subjects who seem a lot like reskinned Thorian creepers, despite who are themselves reskinned husks. Fight your way through and you'll find Dr. Saleon. If Garrus isn't with you, it's possible he can talk Shepard into letting him live, but I just shot him at the first opportunity. Afterwards, Garrus is pleased to have completed his vigilante justice.
So, in our version, we did bring Garrus along. And we let Garrus have his shot at him. Which he was very pleased about. I remember my first things like we always did like the no, we're going to make him stand trial. We're going to bring him to justice. The full paragon, but Just was like no, fuck this guy.
It's interesting because that's the version I go to for as well. And really the quest itself isn't the Dr. Saleon part as far as the story of this quest is. Because going in there, killing some Thorian creepers and then killing this guy or not is a pretty small amount of what actually the impact this has on the game. Because what mostly it is about talking to Garrus about how he reacts to the world around him. I know that you basically over the conversations as you're talking to him, you're pushing him in one direction or the other, like the Law and Order Paragon route or the Renegade Spectre route, like which way he sort of starts to look as like, what's the best version of what should I aspire to be? And you really can push him over the course of it. You can get him to the point where he's at the end of it, he's calling for us to just kill Saren the moment that we see him without any kind of trial versus like, no, we should be bringing these people back and trying to have justice on them and stuff. That makes some of his earlier, I called him sort of the Punisher cop mentality, like that he had earlier on. The fact that is actually a starting place for where you can develop his character to, I think makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I was actually like, I didn't realize like sort of like the hierarchy structure they had for a lot of the late game like character barks and whatnot when you encounter Saren or like when you're dealing with some of the major consequences. there are some surprising changes you can make to the way those conversations go that I would not have expected.
Yeah. You we'll talk a little bit. I know what you're talking about because I think I saw the same Mass Effect Reddit post the other day. You might have. We'll talk about it in the Shadow Broker files.
Absolutely.
All right, let's talk about Tally's quest. Tally's is her pilgrimage, and then also UNC Geth and turret incursions. Look, I'm going to be honest with you. You spend a lot of time on this quest, but nothing actually happens. Like, you go from planet to planet killing Geth, but they've because they've moved in and are making trouble. And once you've killed them all, you go to their base, which is the same base everybody uses, like the Geth bought it at IKEA, and then you kill those Geth. The only cool bit is after you've killed them all, you get to hear a Quarian song, and then you can go get some data from one of their terminals. Afterward, you go talk to Tali and decide if you want to let her take this data back to the fleet and thus complete her pilgrimage. I think it's possible you might not let her do that, but why would you? Tali is best girl. Yeah, this is one of those quests where, based on conversations that you and I have had over the years, this is one of those side quests that leaves them an impression just because of how much Geth you have to kill for it. Like, you have to hit all of these planets.
Okay, I remember this quest being a lot worse than it is in the Mass Effect Legendary Edition, just because of the changes they made to the shield recharge.
Okay.
Those bases were brutal. Like, if you came at them from the wrong angle, like, you would be slammed with like a dozen rockets, and then the recharge time on the Mako's shields was so slow that I would literally set the controller down and walk away for 5 minutes to let it recharge.
Gotcha. Yeah. I have to say, like, my complaint on it specifically this time was just that, again, I wish that there was a more clearly defined approach angle, like what you're talking about too, where like there was some way to look at the map and say, okay, I should be going here first and then approaching them from this direction. That'll be the easiest way just to get there physically, as opposed to mountain goating my way up a mountain.
Yeah.
Which is what I tended to do on those.
Yeah. I always end up like perched on some mountain peak, like with some weird ass angle, like trying to snipe down and getting just pummeled to bits by a dozen Geth rocket launchers.
For the moment to moment, like there's some problems there. I actually think that one of the things they did right on this particular quest is that none of those, at least the initial like 3 or 4 bases, are actually quite different from one another. Like there's a different mixture of turrets versus armatures versus just rocket launching Geth and stuff like that. So like each one of them actually does kind of present a slightly different challenge to it. And then several of them, after you've cleared out the first set of Geth, a Geth dropship comes in and drops more Geth on it. As a second wave, which I really like.
I think there's actually like even a dropship boss fight, if I recall correctly.
Oh, I maybe missed that.
Like there's one point where like you can actually be shooting the dropship and a health bar will pop up on it, and you can actually you can down a dropship.
I remember distinctly doing the same maneuver for the dropships that I used to do in Halo, where you're like hitting guys right as they're coming out. With the Mako shoot, and they'll blow in a bunch of different. That's always fun.
So do you like in those ones with multiple armatures? Do you do the thing where like you park your Mako on top of one armature while shooting the other?
No. So the one of the things I've been doing lately is when I get to the Mako sections, I just turn the game difficulty down to 0, like whatever the lowest one is, because just to make it as least painful as possible.
Fair enough.
And then hopefully remember to turn it back up to my normal difficulty when we get to like the on foot sections. So the game has actually got some challenge to it. But like I just find that the combat in the Mako to be so lacking in terms of controls that I'd rather just get through them rather than like play appropriately, right? You know?
Like I do kind of wish they'd taken a little bit more of a page from Halo's approach to the vehicles.
Oh yeah, if they had copied the Warthog's physics and control scheme 100%.
Yeah, physics and like let you have a gunner riding shotgun. Like,
I mean, like how cool would it be for when you got 2 companions, so you have one person in your passenger seat and one person on your turret, and you get to decide who's who. And like the person on the turret, it uses their like martial skill or whatever to determine how good they are at shooting, and whoever's in the passenger seat is either firing their rockets or maybe using their biotic abilities or something like that.
Yeah, like if you had like Liara riding shotgun and just like tossing Geth about with biotics, that'd be amazing.
Or using barriers to protect your own, see, like that would have been so cool. But of course, that would have required a ton of time and development that they weren't willing to put into something that wasn't the focus of their game. And as much as we'd love to, like I much prefer that they spent that time writing and recording voice actor stuff. That's where I'm really playing this for. I just kind of wish they hadn't made us use the Mako so much is really what it comes down to.
Yeah. So I think my biggest problem with the Geth incursions is like, I'm glad that they established like the Geth is kind of the main antagonist. Yes. And it's like, aside from like the story elements, like where they show up, like you don't really see them that much in the universe. Like they pop up occasionally, but for the most part, like you're bumping into Cerberus, you're dealing with like weird binary helix situations.
You're killing a lot of Thresher Maws, you know, like.
But like the Geth never felt like a threat. Yes. Like they were just like, they just kind of showed up wherever Saren was. And that was it. But like there's so much lore that they could have done with the Geth that like maybe it was hidden in Codex and I've just forgotten because I haven't checked Codex in a while. But like tell me more about the Geth. Like set up Mass Effect 2 and 3 a little bit better.
Yeah. Like being able to fly into maybe a Geth system and attack a base there or something like that would have been really cool. Yeah. I'm disproportionately angry that the final base for this Geth incursion thing is the same base model that we've been using for everything else.
Yeah, no, the two layered prefab military base with some Geth hardware tacked on the walls.
Yeah, it didn't feel Geth at all. It felt that and in a way it made it creates a trajectory for this set of missions where you're fighting Geth, and in fact the outdoor bases are using the Geth like sniper posts and stuff, so they actually feel like Geth. And then instead of building up to some cool fight, you end up going to the same place that you don't see any new content. You just go to the same base you've always seen. You fight the same Geth you've always been fighting. They've got some crap in there, but it doesn't feel different. It feels like something that it almost is a letdown, because of how bad that last.
Always been a problem with the early BioWare 3D games. Like, they just a lot of stuff gets reused. Like I remember just hating it so much in Dragon Age 2. Just the same 3 dungeons over and over and over again.
And part of that's just an amount of time they had to spend on each one of them and all that stuff. Now that being said, when you kill, I really do like the plot elements of this one, where when you finally destroy them, you get to hear a Quarian like song, like it plays over the speakers in the building. That was really cool. I would have liked to have, like, that got me engaged again, and maybe wanted to see what was going on, because it reinforces that connection between the Geth and the Quarians, which is a really cool part of their backstory. And I immediately want to know more about what's going on there. And then you have to go hack a terminal and grab some data for Tali, and presumably you could not give Tali that data, but I don't think you ever.
I've never seen that, because
why would you?
Like, what kind of monster doesn't help Tali out?
Yeah. Okay, well, I think we've covered that one. So the last one, Rex's family armor, I didn't even write a summary for it because I was tired and because there's not really a lot to it. As you're talking to Rex on the ship, he will give you a bunch of old war stories and stuff. But one thing he mentions is the time he almost was killed on Tuchanka, which is why he left. He was betrayed by some dude. He then casually reveals several sentences later that dude was his father, a chieftain. And that one of the things that ended up happening after that guy died was his family armor was like sold off. And that's the one thing that Rex regrets, is never reacquiring the family armor. But he happens to know who owns it now. So you can go fly over to whatever system that is, and you go into the exact same base we were just in a few minutes ago and fight your way through some pirates, and you can get his armor out of a safe. And he's like, "Oh, awesome. Thank you guys. Thank you for the armor." And
I do love the sort of the subversion of expectations. Like anytime like someone's like, "Oh, let's go get the armor," you're like, "Oh, sweet. I'm going to get an upgrade for my dude here." And you get it for him, and he's like, "Wow, I can't believe my ancestors ever wore this piece of crap."
Yeah, he's like, "Oh, it's a piece of junk, but it's nice to have." I'm like, that's awesome. The fact that it's not some legendary super great armor that upgrades his abilities. He's just some crap that he throws away, basically. Well, not throws away, but he keeps because it's sentimental rather than being cool. I do like that. As far as the quest itself go, again, like kind of with the Garrus one, there isn't a lot to the quest itself. You just go to a place, blow up some guys, grab the thing. The story around it is much more interesting, where he's talking about how he had actually been an idealist, thinking that like he's going to affect the Krogan political system of his clan and stuff, and like try to get people to stay and build the planet up instead of all leaving. and that he was betrayed by his own father. That's actually really good character building. It's one of the things I really like about it.
And there's also some Shadow Broker stuff we'll get into for this.
Yeah. And I will say that I can't remember her name. I love his story about the Asari Commando.
Oh yes. I forget her name, but
yeah, Alina. Yes.
I forget I guess more Shadow Broker.
Shadow Broker files before I can answer that question. But yeah, so like some dude hires Rex to kill Alina. Alina and him like have like an old relationship, I guess. It's never really particularly said whether or not they were dating or not at some point, although I choose to believe that yes, they were. He's like, okay, well, instead of just like coming out of nowhere, let's like agree to go fight somewhere. So they choose an old space station and they basically destroy it over the course of several days as they're fighting each other. And he thinks he finally gets the drop on her and then flies off. And then he gets a message from her saying like, better luck next time.
And just like how delated he is by that. Like,
yeah. You can hear the voice actor being like, oh, that's great. I love that. Like, that's such a good story. I really, really like that little side thing from,
that was the story that basically sold me on Rex. Like, up to that point, I'd been like, he's kind of, he's a nice bruiser character, but like, whatever. But then like you hear him like tell that story, like, okay, Rex is really cool.
Yeah. I like Rex too, exactly for the same reason. I like the note. I'm not going to count this as a Shadow Broker file thing, but apparently at the bottom of Alina's wiki page, there's like, despite long-standing speculation to the contrary, Alina and Arya T'Loak are not the same character. And I'm like, yeah, that's the kind of thing fans would say. Yeah, for sure. We'll get to Arya in Mass Effect 2.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, the quest itself isn't much, but I really like that they are engaging your characters and having you go off and do things with them. And again, this is the complaint that lots of people have about the two human characters in Mass Effect 1, which is that like you actually go out into the world and do quests for for your alien friends, and we're going to count maybe Liara's recruitment quest as maybe her own companion quest. And there's just nothing for Ashley and Kaidan. Like, there's no reason to ever do anything for those characters. Like, you don't, like, you talk to them, but like, they don't have a story in Mass Effect 1 in a lot of ways.
I think like one of the mistakes they made was like a big chunk of their story is gated behind romancing them. Like, if you don't romance them as a character, as your main character, you miss out on a big chunk of their story.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, they just assumed that you had to, if you were going to be involved, talking to them, that you were going to be involved with them. And that isn't a great way to go. But like, that being said, another quick quest, like having Ashley say something like, hey, my sister's having a birthday next week and we have complete control over our ship and where we go. Could we just like go to the colony where they're living and like, can I just go like meet my sister for her birthday? Like, even if you never even saw any of those characters, you just drop her off for a minute and she comes back after like a little cutscene being like, oh, thank you so much, Shepard. Like, those are relatively simple quests to create.
Yeah.
That would have been really nice,
I think they were still like with Mass Effect 1, they were still feeling out a lot of different things. And and so much of like, oh, it would have been cool is colored by how well they did with Mass Effect 2 and 3. I think.
Yeah, and obviously these little quests here, despite the fact, I mean, I'm praising them because they were things that you weren't necessarily going to see in every game, but like these are the precursors to the companion quests of Mass Effect 2, which is some of the best content in Mass Effect 2 at all. Like going to do those companion quests, a lot of them are like the memories that I take away from those later games.
Yeah,
and so this is just a precursor to it. So again, like at least with these, the quests themselves are good or bad. They're not great, but the companion part of them is what's good. Talking to Rex about his father, talking to Garrus about how he feels about Dr. Saleon, talking to Talia about her pilgrimage. Those are the really interesting parts of those stories. And I think that they took a lesson away from that when they went to those later companion quests, because those characters become, A, you have to take them along, so you can't leave them, and B, they have a lot more to say, and it becomes a character deep dive at those later points, which is really important and super great. Like, I really, really like the way they took this idea, saw what was good about it, and iterated on it to make them even better.
Yeah, and whatever you want to say about the gameplay, like there's a reason that BioWare NPCs are famous for what they are. It's because like they make good characters, and
that are
really worth like learning about.
Yeah. That's the one thing I haven't touched Andromeda even a little bit. And it's the one thing that I'm looking forward to in Andromeda, like is meeting some of those companions. I don't normally care about spoilers. People who listen to this podcast or listen to me on podcasts enough should know I want spoilers, except for Andromeda. Don't. I'm going to go into that one cold.
Already.
Okay. So we have one last thing to talk about today, which is the DLC, not the only DLC, but the main DLC for Mass Effect 1, which I think was called Bring Down the Sky.
That sounds right.
Bring Down the Sky. Which is okay. So behind the scenes, guys, I was doing all of these quests specifically so we could record this, and I had done all of the companion quests, and I'd done all and I'd written up all my background stuff. I'd even written the summaries, and then I remembered that I had to do this one. We put it on the docket, and it was like 11 o'clock at night, and I was like, oh, fucking hell. So that may have colored my perception of this quest a little bit.
This is a reminder that Scott is the one who does all the work on this.
So I didn't even write a summary for this. The basic idea is that Shep gets a call that there's some Batarian terrorists have hijacked an asteroid and are flinging it at, I don't even remember the name of the planet, some planet full of people. And Shepard has to land on the planet, and there are some engines on the side of this asteroid that we have to go through some small dungeons to disable each of these engines. And then the main terrorist has gotten some people into a small room laced with explosives, and you decide whether or not to kill the people or not. And then you kill the guy or not, and then I guess you save everybody. That's about it. That's the whole thing.
So I disagree that that's the whole thing. Like, I think there's actually a lot of really cool stuff that's brought up in this mission. Like, I realize your experience is somewhat different than mine, but on one hand,
this is why I prefaced it saying that my perceptions may be colored by the experience with which I had.
But for one, this is the first time you actually see any Batarians.
True.
I mean, it's a little questionable to basically introduce a species as basically a species of terrorists.
Yeah, Batarians definitely
pedal it back a little bit, but in later games, but
they really suffer from evil race syndrome. Like they were created specifically to be enemies, and they do not. Maybe they turn it around in 3, but I can't remember anywhere in 2 where you meet any Batarians who aren't like immediately hostile.
In 3 they are a much more sympathetic. In 2 they start working it back. Like you meet a bunch on Omega and whatnot, but it's like shopkeepers and whatnot.
Okay.
In 3 they're a much more sympathetic race.
Yeah. Because by then everybody, well, spoilers. We can't really talk about 3. Yeah. And I will say this: I like the Batarians' design. The 4-eye thing is really cool. They're otherwise kind of humanoid in outline. Mostly, they're one of the more like human outline characters that you could maybe mistake one for a human at a distance. But I like the 4 eyes. I like their kind of face shape. They feel very, especially with the 4-eye thing, it feels like the kind of character design you wouldn't come up with for a TV show. Which is something that Mass Effect gets well, which is to not make the rubber forehead aliens. They really spend some time.
I mean, the Asari are probably
which we've talked about, sort of why Asari may be perceived as being a little bit. Anyway, we'll deal with that. So it's okay. Tell me what else, other than the Batarians, what else is the redeeming qualities of this?
So I think the other thing that's really interesting is they actually kind of like bring in a little bit more of like the hard sci-fi elements of like the reason you're on this asteroid, or the reason there's giant thrusters on this asteroid, is like this is a metal-rich asteroid, which you've kind of like bumped into like elsewhere out in the universe, but like it's just been like a push a button, and this is a metal-rich asteroid. But like they're kind of bringing the idea of like basically farming this asteroid for all the minerals by bringing it into a planetary orbit to like make it easier to harvest. And I always I'm a big fan of that from the hard sci-fi kind of.
Yeah. That is a cool idea.
But yeah, otherwise, like I will say the gameplay is a little better than other areas because they introduce basically a new dungeon. Like you aren't getting the same prefab.
They actually did some modeling.
Yeah, you don't get the same prefab dungeon that you've been going through for the last 30 dungeons. There's still the overworld stuff, which is done a little bit better. They do better at funneling you through areas. It's not quite as.
I think that overworld was actually designed. Yeah,
yes.
I think it was actually meant to be handled in a particular order as opposed to just generated.
Yeah, and there's like focal points. There's like an area where you have to get off and get out of your Mako and go by foot, like, and then you're ambushed in the middle of a minefield, which is like, it's all relatively simple changes, but it's different enough from the other stuff that they've done that I felt like the gameplay is a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I didn't have any real complaints about the gameplay. I don't particularly like the minefield mechanic.
Sure,
but that only because I guess I didn't get ambushed in the minefield when I did mine. It felt a bit.
I mean, like saying ambush is kind of like,
yeah,
as you're running towards the place, like a couple of guys pop up.
Yeah, that one was like, it just didn't strike me. I was like, oh God, I have to get out. It felt like an impediment to getting to the next big dungeon to me. Like it was like they're just trying to delay me and get some extra time out of the content. But I like the fact that they were making those kinds of attempts at the very least, like that they were actually like trying to introduce additional mechanics, as opposed to like, I'd rather them try stuff and it not work than just give me boring crap that doesn't like, because I'm sure some of the same sort of creativity that was going into making something that didn't work for me and maybe worked for other people was also the reason why they had some better combat elsewhere in the same map and stuff like that.
I will say, like, when you start thinking of it from like an RPG point of view, it's a little weird, like, just because of the gear system they have, like, it's real hard to be like, there's never been like if I do this quest, like I get this cool piece of gear, which is actually something they introduce with this here. Like if you buy this DLC, like you have access to like one of the best Omni tools, I think.
Oh, okay.
In the game, there's only like one or two that you see elsewhere, unless I don't know if it shows up randomly or not, but
yeah, Gear's never really been on my radar on Mass Effect about where the cool stuff is. The way they handle that in later games is so much better than the way that inventory and gear is handled in the first one. But yeah.
So yeah, unfortunately, I feel like they took a step back with Andromeda.
Okay.
They brought back like the just hundreds of pieces of gear.
Yeah, that sucks. I also reacted badly to the fact that none of your companion voice actors were brought back for this DLC.
Yeah.
They brought back Mark Meer and they brought back Jennifer Hale to do Shepard, and then they brought in some new people to show up. But the fact that like, I didn't really have emotional reactions to those people. Like I didn't feel like I got enough time to talk to them, to feel their story, to have a reason to talk to them. And the fact that like Liara and Tali are just sitting there completely quiet the entire time, suspiciously quiet, except for like their generic "I'm standing next to you" voice lines, did bother me, because I'm in the BioWare games for the characters, for the story, and I didn't feel emotionally connected to this one. But
yeah, I'll grant you that it did feel a little disconnected from the story in general.
Yeah, and that's a problem for lots of DLCs. You know, it can be really difficult to make a DLC that feels connected to the main game as a whole.
Yeah,
and the plot. And some of those are done better than others and stuff. And I don't particularly care for this DLC. I think if you were playing this all the way through and you skipped this one, you wouldn't miss any. I think you could skip this one and it'd be okay. It doesn't feel like part of the game in a lot of ways.
Yeah. So you ready for Shadow Broker Files?
Let's move on to Shadow Broker Files.
Shadow Broker Files.
So first things first, what you were just saying, it actually does come back up. If you let the guy escape.
Oh, okay.
He shows up in Mass Effect 3.
Okay. Cool.
Like you have a whole conversation like with the terrorist who was trying to blow up a human colony.
Okay, cool. I won't get to see that because I killed his ass. I let him blow up the hostages and just was like, I'm just going to shoot you. It's fine.
Yeah, I think he basically becomes like the spokesman for like the Batarian race that you're constantly talking with on.
Oh, okay.
On the Citadel.
Yeah. And the Batarians get the brunt of the Reaper. They get their asses handed to them by the Reapers almost immediately.
Yes.
Because I guess because of the Leviathan of Dis, which is a Reaper, had indoctrinated a huge amount of their population already. So
yeah, they basically indoctrinated like their entire government structure.
Yeah,
and so I think they basically just like let in the Reapers when they showed up.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go through some of the shadow brokery stuff for this. For the backgrounds, we're going to talk about Old Friends and I Remember Me, both of which do not come up later. Basically,
really?
You get you just get an email from each of them. Like you'll get an email from Talitha, you get an email from Finch if you let him if you let him live or let did business with him, whatever, and just kind of like saying, "Hey, Shepard, here's how my plot's going," but that's it.
That is unfortunate.
That is particularly unfortunate compared to how things go with the Spacer background, because you call your mom like more. Like you brought.
I think you call her like once a game, don't you?
I don't know about 2, but you definitely have an opportunity to talk to her again in 3. I think specifically in the Citadel DLC, which is fantastic. Like I love having that long. Like that was such a small relationship. They could. Lots of other game series would have treated that as a throwaway thing that you just did that one time and never brought it back because it was not something that every Shepard was going to see. And instead, if you've got one, you have an opportunity to talk to her again. And I like Shepard's relationship with their mom. Like it seems sweet. I always thought it was kind of interesting. I don't know if they actually say Shepard's mom's rank, but she's also an XO, just like Shepard was at the beginning of the game, which I think is a kind of neat little connection that they have. Like they kind of rose to the same level,
Yeah.
I would love to have known more about the Kilimanjaro. Like I'd like to see a little bit of life on there and stuff. But that's only because I like Shepard's mom enough that I want to know more about their relationship and stuff.
Yeah.
It's a shame that we didn't get to see their dad, but
it would have been such a cool thing to explore. Like you have kind of like that connection with Shepard's mom, which makes her plotline feel so much more prevalent in Mass Effect 1. Like, even if they just like in Mass Effect 2, like maybe the colonist ship, like dealing with like suddenly you're dealing with Batarians everywhere, and like they could have really done something with that. Like Survivors of Mindoir or something, or
there are more options. They could have done more with this, and I wish they did. But like the fact that they did this at all is fantastic.
Like if you like bumped into like someone like after Shepard, like again, big spoilers, but. When you wipe out the Batarian colony to destroy the warp gate, to like delay the Reapers, like if you had like some survivors from Mindoir being like just coming up to me like
yeah,
and then like you have to decide whether like that was cool or like not cool, dude.
And I have to say, I remember, and we'll get to this in 3, but like the fact that you've got this emotional connection with your mom that you've already seen, because like one of the things when they talk on in Mass Effect 1, it's a little bit like, oh man, I wish I could talk more. Like they obviously care for one another. And then when you call her in 3, and it's a little bit like, how are things doing? Are you okay? I know how dangerous the world is, and they're both concerned for each other, and you feel that coming through both the writing and the performing. Like that, like I distinctly remember that scene being like, yes, that hits emotionally, which is really good. And the fact that you have those tools story-wise available to you only with this one version of Shep kind of is sad. Like I would love to see it. It's a shame that the other versions of Shep don't necessarily get the same emotional hit, because it's so good that I wish more people could see it or something like it.
Yeah. And if you took the Earthborn thing, there's opportunity in Mass Effect 3, like when
you're on Earth.
Yeah, you're on Earth, like you're court-martialed. If there was like a criminal element or something that like affects how that initial phase goes, like if they just alter it a little bit, so instead of like Anderson like busting you out, it's like your criminal crew like breaking you out or assisting Anderson.
Yeah, or like, God, I don't know who they could have done this with, but like if it turned out, like, why not just write Vega so that Vega's from the same neighborhood that you were from?
Yeah.
And then like the moment that you see Vega and then you talk about like, oh yeah, we're like, it's a little bit like, oh, you're from 4 blocks over. We were in different gangs, but we know like all the same stuff, and like have them only sharing that connection if Shepard's an Earthborn.
That would have been amazing.
Yeah, that's like such a good opportunity, but they just didn't. I mean, but like,
hindsight is 20/20.
It's 2020, of course, and all of this is by proxy praise of the way they handled the Spacer Shep, because we just like that version of it so good. Like, this is the one, like, I tell people to always pick Spacer because it's the best one, because you have that extra connection, which is, really, really good emotionally. Like, it works really well. It works really well for the story.
Like, you can be the guy worrying about your mom, like, as you're trying to save the universe.
Yeah, it's great. It really grounds Shepard. I love it. And I choose that one every time, unless we're doing a podcast and I feel like I need to see other stuff.
Yeah.
So I can't remember if there's any other fallout other than what happens to your character for any of these other ones. I don't think so.
I think there's like an offhanded comment from Garrus about like how you handled.
Yeah, but I mean, like, Hart. Other than, I'm like, I was trying to think. I don't think Saleon comes back if you let him go. I don't think the Geth incursions thing matters very much. Rex's armor doesn't, except for how it pertains to the characters themselves.
So yeah, well, I mean, Rex's has a huge impact on.
Yes.
On his.
You need to have completed it on Virmire in order to talk him down from, because we're in Shadowbroker Files, so like they're trying. Saren says he's trying to solve the genophage, and Rex, that was one of his life goals, is like help his people, and so now he's like ready to turn around on you, and you end up having to either pop him off or talk him down, and you need to have done this quest in order to do that, which is good. I like the fact that again, it sort of prefaces what they're going to be doing in 2, which is that you need to have done your companion quests in order to get the good endings, as it were, which I like.
I also think it's interesting that, like, if you haven't done Rex's armor quest and gained his loyalty that way, like, it's also not Shepard who's the one who kills him; it's Ashley.
Yeah,
which I think can also make a big impact on your choices you make in following that.
Yeah. One thing I have to say, I felt like they could have been going in this direction, but then they ended up not, which was that Garrus's whole thing is about whether or not he's going to go back to CSEC or if he's going to go be a renegade, basically. And then in 2, he's a renegade. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, which is a misstep. I understand why they did it, because his change would have been so different if he'd been, if he'd gone back to CSEC instead of showing up as Archangel. Like, I get why that, for technical limitations and sort of plot limitations, why that's the case. But after you spent an entire game convincing this guy that, because I've always been Paragon most of the time, so I've been convincing him, no, you need to go back and work within the law, to have him go decide to be a vigilante on his own, felt like it undid some of that work, which is one of those shameful things.
I mean, to be fair, like this is sort of like Shepard's been, sort of this Paragon figure for him this whole time.
Yeah.
And then dies. And that probably shakes up Garrus's world a little bit. I mean, I could see like
that should have been addressed.
True. I'm fair. I'm with you on that.
Yeah, I mean, like, that it should have been addressed somewhere, because like even if he just came back and said, oh man, like, your death made me have a crisis of faith and go back to do this vigilante thing, but now you're back, I'm ready to, like, maybe this is a sign that I should be turning around, you know? Or even if it had been something like, oh yeah, I'm here as Archangel because I'm under deep cover. Like, I'm basically, CSEC has decided that they needed people who can just go out and do the mean, nasty things. And I'm actually working to, like, capture these people. And like, you could have changed, like, you could have warped that in somehow so that it worked.
Yeah. Garrus as a deep cover agent would have been a really cool, just little side bit, depending on whether you Paragoned or renegaded him. Yeah.
And then maybe this is like, oh yeah, well, I'm disappearing people instead of killing them. And so it's about like, well, they're actually being disappeared to a secret tribunal, which is its own kind of like fucked upness. But
He's Garrus, the secret police.
Yeah, basically. But like that is an excellent way to show how, like, trusting too much in institutions is also kind of its own sort of problem, you know? And that's worth doing. I think that would have been cool. If you spent the entire game being, it would be a bit like if you spent all of, because we're talking about companions now, you spend all of Mass Effect 1 teaching Ashley not to be a racist, and then you show back up in Mass Effect 2 and she's a fucking racist again. Like, it sort of undoes.
Yeah. Or like if you played 3 Mass Effect games and your choice boiled down to three options. And
yeah. Oh, we're gonna have an entire episode of us just bitching. We've already spent like several minutes bitching about the ending in the guest episode with Anna, and now we'll have an entire episode of us bitching. So we'll have to stop away from that.
I think our listener is going to have to.
Yeah, they'll suffer. They'll suffer through it. Yeah. So okay, and then the Tali one has implications as well. Not a huge a number of implications because again, I don't know anybody who would not send the data back for Tali. But also like the implication, I think in 2 is whether or not you've sent it or not, she's going to end up in the same sort of trouble when you have to take her back to the Quarian fleet and stuff. So I'm not sure that one has long-term implications, Shadow Broker stuff, but like it's Tali, of course you're going to send him back. And then we talked about the asteroid one a little bit already, so I don't think we have anything more for that. Is there anything? We put a pin into those final conversations in Mass Effect 1. During the last little chapter, your other companion, whoever you've got along with you, can be chiming in on stuff saying, hey, this versus that, I recommend that you do this versus that. And this, I think, explains why I am the Ashley apologist in the world. Like, I feel like I'm one of those lone voices who's saying that she's not as bad as she was. And it's because the Reddit post that we were talking about, I remember that distinctly from Ashley's backstory, from playing with Ashley in the past. Where if you talk to her as a Paragon through the whole game and tell her, no, we need to be doing this, no, we need to be working with the other species, we need to be part of this galactic community, by the time you get to the end of Mass Effect 1, when the choice comes down to whether or not you should save the Destiny Ascension and therefore the Council, or hold the human ships in reserve in order to attack Sovereign, Ashley's the one arguing that we should be saving the Council. And in fact, in the clip that we saw, it was Liara saying, no, it's not, don't save the Council. Humanity needs to go to its own, which is just a really nice inversion. But I had so ingrained that into my version of Ashley. I forgot that if you don't do that, if you talk to her like a renegade the whole time, she stays racist.
Well, I'm pretty certain she stays racist unless you romance her. I think that revelation of her is like specifically gated behind a romance conversation.
That was said in the Reddit post, but I'm not entirely sure it's true. I have to, and I'm not willing to play Mass Effect 1 all the way through again to check it out. Yeah. There might be a way to do it, but it's actually about every time you have a conversation with her and several other characters, Garrus being another one, you build up Renegade or Paragon points for them based on what you tell them. And I am pretty sure, because I feel like, and this is, I can't remember if I saw that when I was romancing Ashley or if I did it in one of those other times when I was romancing Liara and had Ashley along. But I feel like I had her have that same, like, it felt like such a conversation that I'd seen her have a couple of times that I remembered it, even on times when I wasn't romancing her. But I could be, I will accept being wrong about that, and that's a false memory. But I feel like it wasn't necessarily a romance thing.
I think the other flip side of that is, it is so rare for me to bring Ashley anywhere.
Yes.
That like I never see that, like, that about face on her personality. Like I don't think I've ever brought Ashley to the final confrontation.
Yeah. But I remember doing it. Once I saw that clip, I was like, oh yeah, I remember her doing this and being sort of impressed because she starts off in kind of a bad place, which sucks. And the modern viewer, especially the people who play these games with 15 years worth of additional experience and a different perspective on the world, a lot of people hit Ashley and bounce straight off. I know Jess did with your playthrough lately, and I've heard that same complaint from a bunch of other people who've been playing lately, who like they just write her off immediately. And I felt, I was like, this is the old meme of I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. Like I was like, am I the only person who wasn't thrown off by Ashley that much? And it's because I was a younger person who was more tolerant of that kind of bullshit, and I was willing to spend the time with the character to see the redemption arc of that character a bit. And yeah, and for spoiler effect, if you leave her, if you get her through Mass Effect 1 and she's a Paragon, and you get her to 3 and she becomes a Spectre, she's the one protecting the Council ostensibly from you when she thinks you're a threat. And that's, I think, a reasonable amount of character growth as well.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, well, we've been on this particular episode for over an hour now, and we haven't even talked about our character bracket yet. So let's get into the character bracket.
Already.
Character bracket.
All right. So today's characters, I'm counting this is one character, is the Citadel Council versus Nif-2 Cal, the biotic god. And so I think this is obvious because Nif-2 Cal, the biotic god, is from Mass Effect 2. He is a Volus who has been, I think, injected with some biotic drugs.
Red sand.
Red sand, which makes him increases his biotic abilities, and he's also made him a little bit delusional, and so he declares himself to be a biotic god. And you can either let him go into a dangerous situation, facing off with a bunch of enemies, or you can stop him and prevent, maybe keep him a bit safer. But yeah, he's fun. I like him. It's part of Samara's recruitment mission, if I remember correctly. Yeah, he's fun, and he's one of Mark Meer's better voice acting roles because he does all the Volus. Yeah, he's fun, and I think if you let him go out, he actually does kick some ass. Like, he actually kind of backs it up because his biotics have been overcharged. And then facing this guy off against, I'm counting him as one character because you never get any of them by themselves. Is the Citadel Council, which is one of our big what's the word? I don't like the council. They kind of suck, right? Like, they kind of have to for the plot reasons. Like, if they were on the ball and really like handling things, then Shepard wouldn't need to come in and fix things for them.
Yeah. Now I'm kind of lamenting the lack of like any kind of like galactic politicking that you can do. Like, if you could talk to the counselors individually and sway them that way, that'd be really cool.
If there had been one quest line where you needed to get 2 of the 3 counselors over to your side, and you had to go talk to each of them individually and get a like, you get a small quest or something. They ask you to go do a thing, and you get to talk to them and learn their names, for example.
Yeah.
Like, because I don't know any names for any of the council members, even a little bit. And like, if you'd done that in one, then it would have been an interesting question about whether or not you saved them or not, and then also you would have had either a new relationship with the new council or a carrying over relationship with an old council in Mass Effect 2 would have been really cool too.
And that could have echoed in so many ways throughout Mass Effect 2 and especially Mass Effect 3. Like,
it's and you end up talking to the Solarian counselor in 3 as part of that quest line there. But by then, I think the ship sailed. Like, you weren't gonna they weren't gonna suddenly become cool characters at that point. Yeah, this is a relatively short one because I think Nif-2 Cal is a much better character because he actually makes an impression.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He became such a meme that by the time Mass Effect 3 rolls around, they actually introduced playable Volus biotics in the multiplayer.
Yeah, he's fun. There's something to be said for when you are a writer and you've been given a character, you've been tasked with creating a character who is a throwaway, who's not meant to be anything cool or big or anything like that, and you're just let off the leash to kind of do whatever you want to be a little bit funny. That you end up creating memorable characters that strike people a lot of the time. I think that's fun. The fact that his original creation was so low stakes allowed them to be funny, allowed them to make a character who's interesting, and I think that really helped making that character fun. And
absolutely.
Yeah. It's the same sort of thing with a little bit like Conrad Werner. He's like such a small part of 1, and then people really reacted to him. And again, it's because the stakes were low. Maybe there's something to be learned about that when you end up instead accidentally making the milquetoast characters like Ashley and Kaidan, who don't have anything going on in a lot of ways. I like Ashley. Kaidan, I'm warming up to because I've been forced to talk to him more over Mass Effect 1 this time because I normally don't talk to him at all. Compared to all of the aliens, man, those characters really suffer. And I think it's because a little bit they were playing them a little too close to the vest and not doing enough with them. All right. Well, there we go. We'll take Nif-2 Cal onto let's go ahead and call that. That's it for us this week. We will see you next week.
All right. Until next time.
Thank you for listening to the N7 Project. If you would like to read the upcoming playthrough roadmap, there is a link in the show notes below. We can be found on Twitter as @N7Project, at our website, masseffectpodcast.com, or via our Discord, scottpaladin.com/Discord. If you'd like to support the podcast, honestly, the easiest way to be to write us a review on Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, or your podcatcher of choice. We read every one of those, and it gives us a real boost every time, and it helps people find the podcast. Or if you want to give monetary support, all funds to our Patreon, patreon.com/monsterpod, will also go to supporting this podcast.
Mass Effect, its associated characters, sounds, plot points, whatever, are copyright by some giant faceless corporation. The N7 project was produced and edited by me, Scott Paladin, and hosted by myself and my best friend, Zach Jaquays. Audio is copywritten 2022, Scott Paladin. This has been a Library of Cursed Knowledge production.